It's not a disease. It's not a global financial crisis. It's not a natural disaster. What is shaking America is America itself. One by one, from bustling economic centers to lands once considered the promised land, states are quietly falling into a spiral of decline. Populations are plummeting, incomes are dropping, businesses are closing, and a string of cities have turned into ghost towns in just a few short years. And the irony is, very few people realize that. And if you live in the US, this directly affects you. Because every person who leaves is a taxpayer who disappears. Every factory that closes is a job that will never return. And each state that collapses is a piece in the picture of a fracturing America. In today's video, we'll delve into the 10 states facing the worst decline in American history to understand why this is happening, and more importantly, how it's quietly changing your life. Florida. The name once conjured images of sun-drenched beaches, swaying palm trees, and a dreamy retirement life. But now, the Sunshine State is gradually losing its light. And the painful truth is, this is not due to storms or natural disasters, but is the result of human hands themselves. Let's start with some numbers. Over 35,000 jobs disappeared in just 1 year. Tourism revenue evaporated by billions of dollars. And over 180,000 homes are waiting for buyers, the highest number in the state's history. If every home is a family story, then Florida is accumulating over 180,000 unfinished stories. The problem is that Florida isn't just losing money, they're losing people. International arrivals to the US decreased from 72.4 million in 2024 to 67.9 million in 2025. Among them, 4.5 million tourists, equivalent to the entire population of Kentucky, chose to go elsewhere. The fatal blow came from Canada, as the number of snowbirds, those who used to pour money into winter condos, local restaurants, and small shops, decreased by as much as 10–16%. Why? It's not a tsunami, but a wave of public opinion. Controversial political statements have made visitors feel unwelcome. Adding to that are complex visa procedures, a strong US dollar, and strict immigration policies. So they chose Mexico, Portugal, or the Caribbean, places that welcomed them with smiles instead of suspicious glances. Imagine this on a human level. A coastal restaurant that used to serve 300 customers a day now only serves 180. A hotel that used to be fully booked in winter is now half empty. A tour guide who used to speak to hundreds of guests now sits counting each call. When tourism money doesn't flow in, it takes with it jobs, taxes, and the dreams of millions of Florida families. And the bitterest irony of all is this. Florida was once hailed as the place everyone wanted to come to live out their remaining years. But if the situation continues, that remaining part of life could be bankrupt. Is this just a temporary economic downturn, or is it a sign that Florida is losing its former position? If a state that once thrived on sunshine, white sand, and tourist dollars falls into a recession, what will happen to the rest of America? What do you think? Will Florida rise again and find its light? Or is this just the opening chapter of a decline that will last longer than we think? Leave your thoughts, because this story will sooner or later touch your own life. And if you think Florida is a special case, just wait and see. Because the next state on the list isn't just losing population, it's also losing the title of American icon. Let's fly with me to the East Coast, where New York is witnessing a historic exodus. Let's temporarily forget the dazzling lights of Times Square or the glamorous photos from the Empire State Building Observatory, because behind that glamorous curtain lies a harsh reality. Hundreds of thousands of people are fleeing this state, and they're not looking back. According to official figures, in just 1 year, over 300,000 people have left New York. Since 2020, the state's population has decreased by nearly 6%, a number large enough to fill the entire city of Pittsburgh. Why is there such a large-scale migration? The answer lies in 3 words: unbearable. Rental prices in New York have exceeded the average middle-class income. A small 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn can now cost over $4,000 a month, enough to cover an entire mortgage in Texas or Florida. As for living expenses, from the morning coffee to health insurance, everything has become so expensive that even the middle class is having to tighten their belts. Meanwhile, this state's income and property tax rates are also among the highest in the country, with many people even joking that working in New York isn't about living, but about paying taxes. Adding to that are 2 final straws: a post-pandemic rise in crime and the trend of remote work, which made millions realize, if I can work from home, why pay to live in the most expensive place in the country? As a result, neighborhoods that were once bustling are now empty, filled with "for lease" signs. Small businesses are going bankrupt en masse because they no longer have customers. The state budget lost billions of dollars as taxpayers left, and as the middle class withdrew from the city, the economy lost its backbone. Some experts are even warning about New York's downward spiral. As people leave, taxes increase to balance the budget. High taxes cause many others to leave. The budget is again in deficit, and the cycle continues. This is no longer the Empire State, but perhaps the exit state, where the empire once built on dreams is now collapsing under its own weight. What do you think? Can New York reverse this migration? Or are we canonised the end of an era as America's largest economic center turns into a museum of the past? And if you think only New York is losing population, just wait and see what's happening in California, where the American dream once burned brightly, but is now slowly fading. If New York is proof that an economic empire can collapse on its own, then California is the most vivid example of how an American dream can expire. And the truth is, no one leaves paradise unless paradise is no longer worth living in. A figure that shocked the entire country. Over 500,000 people left California in just 2 years, the largest migration in the state's history. Imagine a city the size of Atlanta suddenly disappearing from the map. That's exactly what's happening in the Golden State. So, what's causing hundreds of thousands of people to abandon what was once considered the world's center of innovation? The answer is painfully simple. They can no longer afford to live here. The average home price exceeds $800,000, which is 3 times the national average. A small apartment in San Francisco is now more expensive than a mansion in Austin. Personal income tax can be as high as 13.3%, the highest in the country. Many people joke that working in California is like working with the government, because nearly half of your salary goes to taxes. Along with this, environmental laws, business costs, and strict labor regulations are driving a wave of small and medium-sized businesses to more business-friendly states like Texas or Nevada. And then, the story wasn't just about money. It's about the feeling of being abandoned, when the middle class, the backbone of the state, no longer has a place. Young families can't afford their first home. The retiree had to sell their house to move to Arizona. Even tech companies, symbols of the California dream, are quietly moving their headquarters to lower-cost locations. A chain reaction has occurred. The housing market is oversupplied, tax revenues are severely depleted, and infrastructure is deteriorating due to lack of investment. And as the population leaves, public services, from schools to hospitals, begin to struggle due to a lack of contributors. The dream of golden sunshine, blue seas, endless opportunities that California once sold to America, is now falling into a state of return and refund. And perhaps the most bitter joke is what people from other places say about California. There, You can live like a Hollywood star as long as you're willing to pay like a billionaire. Can California save itself? Or will this be the final chapter of a century-long dream? When a state that once led the world in technology, culture, and economy becomes a place people just want to leave, it's not just California's problem. That's a sign that the American dream is gradually slipping out of the hands of Americans themselves. And if you think this story is bad, just wait until the next state, where the cold winds of the Midwest blow through cities emptied by people leaving. Illinois. In the past decade alone, Illinois has consistently ranked among the top 5 states with the fastest population loss in the United States. Each year, tens of thousands of people pack their bags and leave Chicago to seek opportunities elsewhere. Imagine a stadium packed with the people, completely empty after each tax season. That's Illinois today. Why? Perhaps one doesn't need to be an economist to see that taxes in Illinois are like winter in Chicago. They always come and get colder every year. Property taxes have increased by over 15% in just 5 years, forcing many families to sell their homes because they can't afford them. The state government's pension burden exceeds 140 billion USD, and this figure continues to balloon like a balloon no one dares to pop. To compensate, the government constantly raised taxes, but ironically, the more taxes increased, the more people left. And the more people left, the more the budget deficit grew. This is what's called the Illinois vortex. People leave, taxes increase, which causes more people to leave, and then taxes increase again. It's like trying to bail water out of a sinking boat with a spoon. Local schools had to close due to a lack of students. Road infrastructure is deteriorating because there is no money for maintenance. Once bustling residential areas are now filled with for sale signs. And Chicago, the Windy City, now not only has the wind blowing through its skyscrapers, but also through thousands of vacant homes. What hurts many people the most is the feeling of lost trust. They no longer believe that the tax money they pay will improve their lives. They no longer believe this state can control spending. And when trust disappears, people don't stay to wait for a miracle. They simply go elsewhere. A resident once quipped, "In Illinois, taxes never disappear, only taxpayers do." It sounds funny, but that's the most honest summary of the situation here. Can Illinois escape this cycle of taxes, migration, deficits? Or will the City of Wind only remain a memory of a bygone golden age? And if Illinois is losing people due to taxes, the next state faces a much deeper problem. An aging population, something that could stifle the future from the very beginning. If Illinois is like a leaky tax boat, then Pennsylvania is like a clock that has stopped. The hands are still turning, but it's no longer moving forward. This isn't a crisis as loud as the ones in New York or California. It's silent, slow, and therefore even more worrying. Pennsylvania is aging rapidly. The average age of the population has exceeded 41, higher than the national average. Many small towns have become giant retirement clubs, where grocery stores sell more blood pressure medication than children's toys. And as young people leave to find work in more dynamic states, the streets that were once filled with laughter are now only echoed by the sound of walking sticks tapping on the sidewalks. The problem isn't just about population. That's the story of an entire outdated economic model. The heavy industry, once the heart of Pennsylvania, has been in decline for decades, leaving behind a series of rusting factories as a testament to the past. Universities are reporting a sharp decline in enrollment as students choose to study in places with higher job opportunities. And new businesses, from technology to finance, almost completely bypass this state in favor of younger economic hubs. What are the consequences? The labor force is shrinking, the healthcare system is strained, and GDP growth is slower than in most other states. In fact, many local governments have had to consolidate schools because there are no longer enough children to fill the classrooms. Local people often joke with each other in a way that's both funny and painful. In Pennsylvania, the future retired a long time ago. And indeed, it was no longer the story of an old state, but of a state that no longer had the energy to renew itself. The question is, can Pennsylvania turn back the clock? Can vitality be renewed by attracting young people, new businesses, and immigrants? Will this guy continue to stand still? A still photograph in America's album that's moving faster than ever? And if you think aging is already a big problem, just wait for the next state, where the story isn't just about an aging population, but an entire once vibrant industry slowly turning into a pile of nostalgic dust. Once, Ohio was the industrial heart of America, where giant machines roared, red-hot steel poured out by the ton, and millions of families lived off the car, steel, and mechanical factories. But what about now? Those machines are silent, the factories are desolate, and the name Rust Belt is no longer a nickname, but a prophecy come true. Cities once vibrant like Cleveland, Akron, or Youngstown now look like ghost towns. Shops are closed, malls are dusty, and residential areas are abandoned. Why has a state that was once the engine of American production fallen into this situation? The answer is a combination of three factors. First, it's globalization. As the supply chain moved overseas, millions of manufacturing jobs left Ohio for Asia, Mexico, or Eastern Europe, where labor costs were cheaper. Next is automation. Jobs that once required hundreds of workers are now replaced by a few robotic arms. And finally, new businesses don't want to locate their factories in old, outdated places, while old businesses either close down or move elsewhere. And then, a generation of young people grew up without seeing a future in their homeland. They left to find work in Austin, Denver, or Charlotte, where technology and opportunities are booming. Home prices in many areas of Ohio are plummeting, while unemployment rates in some cities are double the national average. Local governments are struggling to maintain basic services because of an alarming drop in tax revenue. People here often say, the Rust Belt has become the Dust Belt. Dust covers even the remaining dreams. It sounds funny, but it's a painful truth. When an economy is left behind, it not only loses money, it also loses people's faith in the future. Can Ohio rise from the ashes of the industrial age? Or will it continue to rust in silence, like a living museum of 20th century America? And if Ohio is a victim of globalization, the next state is a victim of itself, where people are leaving not because jobs have disappeared, but because taxes are impacting their entire lives. Let's go to New Jersey. No blizzards, no earthquakes, no global crises. Just the annual tax bill was enough to make thousands of New Jersey residents pack their bags and leave. And it's no coincidence that the locals gave their state a rather unflattering nickname, Tax Hell. A number that makes any taxpayer sweat, $9,500 a year. That's the average property tax in New Jersey, the highest in the United States. A middle-class family, just to keep a roof over their heads, had to pay more than the cost of living for a family in Texas or Tennessee. And if you think it's just property tax, let me remind you that there's also income tax, sales tax, vehicle tax, gas tax. It seems like every breath you take is taxed. Consequence? The people have had enough. Every year, tens of thousands of families leave New Jersey to seek out states with lighter tax policies, such as Florida, Texas, or Pennsylvania. Small businesses, already operating on thin margins, also couldn't withstand the pressure of soaring taxes and insurance costs. As a result, the local economy gradually shrank. Fewer jobs, fewer shops, and fewer reasons to stay. The infrastructure situation isn't any better. Roads are deteriorating. The public transportation system is overcrowded. Schools are facing budget cuts, all while citizens are still paying the highest taxes in the country. That leads to a very dangerous feeling, a loss of trust. People no longer believe that the money they sweat and toil for is actually used to improve their lives. Each year, New Jersey loses more residents and businesses. And with each person who leaves, the economic future becomes more uncertain. And if New Jersey drives people away with its cost of living, the next state is even more bitter, where the cost of survival is so high that even paradise becomes a place no one wants to stay. Let's go to Hawaii. If New Jersey is where you pay taxes to live, then Hawaii is where you have to win the lottery to survive. That's right. The tropical paradise that millions dream of visiting once in their lives is becoming a place where the indigenous people are doing everything they can to leave. For 4 consecutive years, Hawaii has seen a continuous population decline, something that hasn't happened since World War II. And the reason is brutally simple. Life here is so expensive that even the locals can't afford to stay. Let the numbers speak for themselves. The median home price in Hawaii has surpassed $1 million, nearly 4 times the national average. A small house on the island costs the same as a mansion in Texas or Florida. Rent consumes over half of the average income, while the price of a loaf of bread could be enough to buy an entire large loaf in the southern United States. And don't forget, almost everything in Hawaii has to be imported by sea or air. From food and building materials to gasoline, everything has been marked up several times. That turns the monthly utility bill into an endless nightmare. But the high prices are just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper issue lies in the economy's over-reliance on tourism. When the pandemic and international fluctuations occurred, Hawaii was almost paralyzed because it had no alternative sources of income. Without a developed technology sector and large industrial zones, high-quality job opportunities are as rare as diamonds in the sand. Young people, especially those with education, are forced to leave the island to seek a future on the mainland. What are the consequences? A deserted paradise. Schools are closing because there are not enough students. Businesses are complaining because they can't find employees. The community is aging and increasingly dependent on tourists, who may also be considering going elsewhere due to rising costs. Hawaiians often say, "Paradise is only paradise if you have money." And that is the heartbreaking paradox. What was once considered a symbol of the American dream has now become living proof that that dream is not for everyone. Can Hawaii diversify its economy to retain its population? Here we go. Paradise on the sea will become a resort island for the wealthy, and there won't be any room for the locals. And if Hawaii is isolated by prices and the cost of living, the next state is even more dire, where brain drain not only leaves, but never returns. Welcome to Connecticut. According to population reports, Connecticut is among the states losing young people the fastest in the United States. Each year, tens of thousands of students who graduate from Yale, UConn, or other prestigious universities leave, not to travel, but to never return. If grey matter bleeding were a disease, Connecticut would be the classic case. The reason? There are many, and they all revolve around a common point: a lack of opportunities for development, limited job market, especially in high-tech and innovation sectors. The startup environment is less attractive, and venture capital is flowing strongly to dynamic centers like Boston, New York, or Austin. Additionally, the high cost of living and property, taxes among the highest in the country, make starting a career here a luxury. Connecticut is facing a paradox. It trains tens of thousands of high-quality students each year, only for them to serve the economies of other states. You can imagine it's like investing in and nurturing a talented team, only to see them wearing the jerseys of the opposing team. Not only limited to the labor market, the phenomenon of brain drain also creates a domino effect. When young people leave, new tech companies no longer have the human resources to develop. When a business doesn't grow, it also doesn't attract new people. And when no new people arrive, the economy falls into a state of old age. say, a self-devouring spiral. So the question is, can Connecticut reverse this brain drain by reforming its policies and creating new opportunities? Or will it continue to be a talent incubator for other places? And that's the big picture of the 10 states experiencing the largest decline in American history. Every place has a story, every state has a reason, but they all reflect a deeper reality. America is changing. That change didn't happen overnight. It stems from decades of political decisions, from nearsighted tax policies, from excessive dependence on outdated industries, and above all, from our being so accustomed to the feeling that America will always be okay until the numbers are no longer on our side. But this isn't just a problem for Florida, New York, or California. This is our story. The story of those who are living, working, paying taxes, and nurturing hope in this country. Because when a state collapses, the economy doesn't just lose a portion of its GDP. It loses people, dreams, and even a part of the American soul. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. Do you live in one of these states? What changes have you witnessed in the past few years? And most importantly, what do you think America needs to do to secure its future? If you find this video helpful, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we have a lot more in-depth content about the American economy, politics, and society that you won't want to miss. This video is based on publicly available data, reports, and trends from various reliable sources. Its purpose is to analyze, discuss, and stimulate thought, not to provide financial, political, or personal advice. All conclusions should be re-evaluated in your own practical context.